We're going to take a look at the structure on the first floor real quickly. You can see that we've put in our structural systems to carry the floor loads. Those loads get transferred to some steel beams. The steel beams also carry the loads from the walls above, which are bringing all the loads down onto the steel beam. If we take a look at the basement plan, you can see that without the steel, without the wood joists in there, you can see that these steel beams are what carry the loads all the way from above. And the reason that we can use steel beams to carry those loads is that they're much stronger structural members. But most likely the steel beams that we're going to put in here can't span the distance from here to here without some intermediate supports. And that's what we want to do in this tutorial, is to put in some of those intermediate supports so that the span of the beam is not from here to here, but the span of the beam is from here to here where there'll be a support, and then from here to here where there'll be a support, and then from here to here. You could span that entire distance, but it would take a substantially large steel beam, which would be very, very deep. And depending upon your basement height, you may find that you have to duck down below the steel beam in order to get from one side to the other. That wouldn't be a problem. If you had walls in here, then you'd only have to duck down where if you had walls in here, you wouldn't have to be concerned about it because you wouldn't have to duck down because there'd be a wall there. But we put the steel beams in so that we can use this space down here and with our columns. So if we go over to a section, let's take a look at the section, and we're going to have a steel beam that goes from a steel column that goes from the bottom of the steel beam all the way down to the top of the footing, or in my case, I think I call it the bottom of the basement wall. Let's see what that is. Yeah, bottom of basement wall. So I want to put in another level that is at the bottom of the steel beam. And I want to rename that level to bottom of steel beam. I like to use caps. So now I have a level that's at the bottom of the steel beam, and I will use that as my constraints for my steel columns. So back to the first floor structural plan. Now we're working on the structural plan now. And I'll simply put in a steel beam or steel column. So I go to the structured tab, and then I'm looking for a structural column. And I have a pipe column. If you don't, then load a family, go to your structural columns and get a steel pipe column. That would be insert, load a family. We want our Imperial Library. We're looking for structural columns. We would go over there. What is that structural column made out of? Well, it's steel. So we would go to steel. And then we would look for pipe column is fine. And then pick a size of pipe column. I like 3.5 inches fine. What do we have here? Yeah, 3.5. So I would just say that and load it into the project. And there it is. So now notice for some reason I can't control the constraints here. That's a little bit odd, but I just want to put a steel column there, and then I'll take care of the constraints by clicking on it. And I want the base level to be the bottom of the basement wall, and I want the top level to be the bottom of steel beam, okay? And so now it disappears because we can't see it. It's underneath the steel beam. And if we go back and take a look at that section now, let's see, there's my steel column. Where does it start? It starts at the top here, right at the bottom, and goes where to where? It goes all the way down to the bottom of the basement wall, because we would put a pad footing underneath that, okay? So I'll take and say maybe here I want to have 2, so I'm just going to copy it. It has all the right constraints, all right? And then I'll have to space those properly. So let's do that. How would we do that? Back to the first floor structural, and I'll just change my view range, VR, so that it's cutting through a little bit lower here. So let's go down a foot and see what happens if we apply that. There we go. I can still see the steel beam, so I'm going to go down -2 feet where I'm cutting through my basement wall and apply that. And that's still not enough. Let's go down -3 feet. That should have been enough as far as I understand it. And apply it. There we go. Now I can see my steel columns. But I don't know where the end of the beam is anymore. So back to the view range, and I'll change that back up to -2. And let's see what happens. Now I can see where I do want a column right there as well. So I'll go over to architecture and put in a reference plane that will give me the intersection of the center of this beam along with the intersection of the center of this beam. And then I'll go and change my view range again, VR. I'm going to cut down another foot below there. And put the minus in there. Okay, so now I know where I want I want a column at the intersection of that. So I'll simply modify, tab, copy. I'm going to copy that, and I'll just copy it down, straight down. And then I'll use my align tool to make sure I get the actual center of that column. So now I have 3 columns in there that I want to have equally spaced. So we'll dimension it. I'm going to dimension from the center of here to the center of here to the center of here, and then to the basement wall, and I'll put that in and say make them all equal. And there we go. So now my columns are equally spaced underneath there. And let's go back to the view range again and change that to -2 feet so I can see my columns. So I'm cutting a little bit higher. Now I can see my beams now, and I can put one. Well, actually, I have one right here. Let's see if no, I was going to try to grab it, but by using a window. So I do want one to be right here. So I'll use my reference planes again. I want one at the intersection of my 2 beams. So I'm going to say, give me a reference plane right here. Give me a reference plane right here. And then I'll put one in the middle of here. And I'll put one in the middle of here. So I'll go back down to the view range, change that to -3, apply it. And so I want to say, okay, to that, I'm going to copy this guy from here to here. Looks like he's centered there. And then I'm going to add one more. So I'll just copy that guy from here to here. And then I'll use my dimension tool. And I'll dimension from the center of here to the center of here to the center of here, say equal. And now I have another one in there. Delete and unconstrain. I think that span is fine. That span is good. And then I'll just put one more right here. So I'm going to copy this guy. Just copy it over a little bit. Then again, I'll dimension. From here to here to here, and just say equal. So now, what do we have? Unconstrain it. So now I have my columns. Got my columns in here. I have my columns in here. Let's go back and see with the view range. Let's just cut back up a foot less, -2 feet. And definitely going to need some here, aren't I? So maybe I should extend this beam all the way to there too. Okay, and maybe I should extend this guy all the way to there too. Okay, so now let's see what we have. I definitely want one right here. So I'm going to go back and use my reference planes again. And I'm just going to make an intersection from the center of here, from the center of this beam, and then from the center of this beam. And I might put in maybe a few more there, but I'll just go back to my reference plane now, VR, and go back so I can see my columns minus 3 feet and apply that. And I'm going to copy one of these guys from the center of here to, I wanted it to go to the intersection of here, but I guess I'll have to move it down now. So now I'll move it from the center of here down to there. All right, so do I want them to line up? Maybe I just want them to line up with those columns. And that would be okay. So let's see. I'll copy this guy, hold the control key down, copy this guy, and copy this guy. And I'm just going to move it down, straight down. And let's see if that's aligned. If this guy is aligned perfectly, didn't move. Okay, so there's my columns now. You can see I have these columns in here. Whoops, I moved them instead of copying them. So I will undo, and let's try first. I'm just going to drag this guy over a little bit farther. Okay, so now I have a reference where I'm going to copy these guys to. Select all 3 of those, copy from where? From here, straight down to here. Okay, so there's my columns, and I think that steel beam that's here can span far enough. So now we've put our columns in. They're all the right height. So let's go back and look at one of these sections and see what we did. See the columns? Let's see, this might make it even more clear. Okay, so that's what we did. So we put columns to carry the, to decrease the loads, no, to decrease the spans of these members. So part of the purpose or the effort to design the steel beam would have, we would say, well, what are the total loads coming down on it? And a part of the formula would say, well, what's the span? So the greater the span, the greater the size necessary for the steel beam to carry the loads. But we've put in pad footings. We put in columns here, and my question, I was thinking ahead here. Let's go to structure and see if we can put that. We can put a pad footing on here. And let's see what happens. We'll go back to that section 4. And I don't see a pad footing in there. We'll go back to the first floor plan just to see how far this guy goes. It goes far enough. So let's try it again. Structure, isolated. Let's put it right here. And what does it say? None of the created elements can be seen. So let's take a look at that in our 3D. I don't see any pad footings there. And yeah, look what happened. I just put the pad footing too high. All right, so that's fine. We'll take a look at that. Highlight it, go to section 4. We can see it. Let's see if we can change the level of that to the bottom of the basement wall. Apply it, and there it is. You can't see it because the building pad is in the way, so I'm going to hide that building pad. So, whoops, I want to select the building pad, hide in view, element, and now I can see my pad footing, okay? So it's in the right spot. I'll just copy it from the midpoint of here to the midpoint of here. Let's see. I'll go to, and I'll copy it to the midpoint of here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's go back to that 3D view, and I'm going to hide this floor, hide in view element, so I can see my pads. And I can see them, there's two there. I'm not sure which one is the right one. I think it's that one, so I'll delete this one. Okay, and then back to the structural structural plan, and let's see what else we can do. Let's change the view range now, so that we can see a little bit lower. So I'm going to go -10. Let's see if it'll show me what I wanted to see. No, let's go from the first floor -11 and see what happens. Whoops, I did the wrong one. So we'll do this one, -11. And apply it, and we'll make, so I'm still seeing my basement floor. So then we'll do it this way. We'll hide in view the basement floor, and then I'll just copy it this way. So copy from the center line of here. We're gonna go midpoint of here, the midpoint of here. And we'll copy this guy from the midpoint of here to the midpoint of there. So these are helping to distribute the loads that are coming from the column down to the ground, but spreading it out at a greater distance in terms of the loads. Instead of just being concentrated on this little area as it comes down, the loads are being transferred to the ground through this area, which is simply a larger area. So the bearing capacity of the soil will be able to carry the weight. It wouldn't be able to probably carry the weight of all of those loads coming down just on this column, because it would be too concentrated. But when we start spreading all of those loads out over this distance that are coming down through the column, then it seems like it might be a little bit better distribution of the loads. More likely that the earth could resist the loads that are coming down from the pads rather than what's coming down from just that little steel column there. So we'll grab one more. I think we're going to be in good shape here. Now I have all my pads down there. So I'm just looking at the stairs to make sure that I'm not, I'm coming up the stairs here, or I would be coming down the stairs here, so my column's really not in the way. But if this were my down, where I would actually be coming off the stairs here, this might be a little bit of an issue. So everything looks good. I'm going to save it and stop this tutorial.